Football is finally here. And today on Sports Card Investor, we're previewing the NFL season and telling you some cards you should think about buying. My name is Jeff Wilson. By day, I invest in tech companies. And at night, I invest in sports cards. Join me on my journey to profit from the hobby we all love. Sports Card Investors, and welcome to another episode. This is a very special time of the year. Football is upon us. I cannot wait. And I am excited, by the way, to see the crazy price movements that we are going to see in football cards. I know it's coming. You know it's coming. Cards are going to be bouncing around after every Sunday's set of games. In fact, even during the games, Thursday nights, Sundays, Monday nights, card prices are going to be bouncing around like crazy. If you are using my Market Movers data platform, that is the best way to watch not only how card prices are changing, but also the value of your collection, how the value of your collection is going up and down every single day. You can check out all of that by going to sportscardinvestor.com and clicking on Market Movers to learn more. And today, we've got a very special episode. I am bringing in a guest, a great guest, to help us preview the NFL season and talk about football card buying opportunities. I am bringing in Anthony Becht. Anthony Becht played in the NFL for 12 years. He was a first-round draft pick by the Jets back in the year 2000. He played tight end. He played for the Jets, the Bucs, the Rams, the Cardinals, and the Chiefs. And then for 7 years, he was an ESPN college football analyst. So you probably have seen him before on ESPN. You probably have listened to him covering various games. And today he is with us to preview the NFL season. By the way, before we start, follow him on Twitter. He is Anthony_Becht, and Becht is Becht. Follow that account right now on Twitter, because this season, he's going to be putting out some really great content. He's doing a podcast dedicated to the Bucs. He's doing a separate podcast dedicated to the Jets. He also has his own website now about sports cards, because he's getting into football card investing. And he's also going to do some generalized content and shows about the NFL. So lots of great content. Again, Anthony_Becht on Twitter. But without further ado, let's bring him in to talk about NFL and talk about football cards. Please join me in welcoming Anthony to Sports Card Investor. Anthony, welcome to Sports Card Investor.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I know you are down there in the lovely Tampa Bay area. I love Tampa. I grew up near Tampa. I've got an office for one of my companies in Tampa, so I'm jealous of where you are right now. But it's I got to imagine a compelling place to be this year with the NFL season about to start, considering all of the off-season moves and attention on the Bucs. What are things like down there for the Bucs?
Yeah, they're calling it Tampa Bay, right? Because Tom Brady has arrived. All the fans are really excited. I mean, from an organizational standpoint, it really kind of stinks you don't have fans in the stadium this year. But I'll tell you, just a lot of buzz. Everything that's going on so far as his arrival to Tampa Bay, and then, of course, in training camp, it has been all plus signs. Everybody's excited. He's had an excellent camp. And you talk about all the weapons that he has around him this year. I mean, on paper for me, Jeff, when I look at these guys, I really look at the teams they play and the defenses they go against. I'm not quite sure what exactly defenses will be able to do when you have weapons like Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Rob Gronkowski, O.J. Howard, newly signed Leonard Fournette.
Yep.
LaShawn McCoy is even in there at the running back position. So just a tremendous amount of advantages that this team's going to take advantage of. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how that product comes together, especially early in the season.
They do seem loaded offensively, and then they've got Bruce Arians, who obviously is kind of an offensive-minded coach as well. He's done some amazing things. Do you think their offense is going to be as good as what everyone thinks it could be?
It's got to be. I mean, the problems you have when you defend a team like that has that kind of lineup is you can't press the receivers like Evans and Godwin because they have good stretch. They have good ability to get down the field and make big plays with their speed. Then interiorly, you can't really bring safeties down in the box because if you have tight ends that can stretch the field. You have to really take away those seam routes and those things over the middle. And then you enter the equation of a running back. Well, the number one defense, to really make it simple when you're a running back to go against, is when you have the safeties back. Well, that's what they're going to have to do and go against most of the time. So I really see a run game for this football team that's been really bad over the last decade, right, since Doug Martin was there. So I really think it can take off, regardless of Fournette or McCoy or, Ronald Jones, who's ever in the backfield. I just think that the running backs are really going to be key. And we've seen Tom Brady over the years in New England. The running back has been a huge weapon in the passing game. If these DBs are going out and the linebackers are going out into the field, guess who's going to be open in the swing routes with a lot of space to run is the running back. So I really expect this offense to take off quickly.
Yeah, that's interesting. And in fact, my last episode a couple days ago in my top 5 cards that were going up, Leonard Fournette was one of those cards because when it was announced that he was cut by the Jaguars and then signed by Tampa Bay, his cards took off. I mean, a 2x, 3x, 4x type of increase overnight on a lot of his cards. So people are anticipating him potentially having a good season. You mentioned the wide receivers. I just brought up a graph here. This is the card prices of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And they both have been going up quite a bit this offseason. Man, before the news of Brady going to Tampa broke, I mean, these were inexpensive cards. You could have gotten Chris Godwin's 2017 Prism rookie card silver in raw for like $1, or actually, no, I'm sorry. Godwin's was, well, here we go. Godwin's was $5 for his silver. Actually, Evans' 2014 Prism in raw was like a couple bucks. So, I mean, both of these guys, their cards were like $5 or less if we go back to pre-Brady news. And now you're talking, like most recently, you're talking about $25 for the Evans card, about $50 for the Godwin card. Based upon recent sales. And so the Godwin card being a little more rare, which is why it's actually a little more expensive than Evans, even though Evans has been maybe a little more established through his career. And so, just let me clarify just for all the sports card heads out there. The Godwin card is more rare because when Evans was a rookie, there was also Topps Chrome and other sets as well. So there's a lot of different Evans cards out there, whereas Godwin, that Prism Silver, was really his main rookie card. So, but both of these cards obviously have got, I mean, you're talking like a 10x increase in both of these cards, but it's still possible, I think, if Brady comes out and keeps throwing the ball at him, and if the offense is as explosive as you said it might be, I mean, these cards could continue to go up. Maybe it's Fournette, obviously Brady, his prices are well established, but a resurgence of his career in Tampa, who knows where these card prices could go. It's going to be interesting to watch.
You're right. I think you hit the nail on the head with Fournette card for sure. You've seen that go up. I've tracked that myself on some of those instances where, people look at him in Jacksonville and think he was a bust. I mean, the guy's coming off 1,000 yards rushing. He had 75 catches last year. So, listen, with the advantages and the receivers, the running game can take a spark. And one of those two receivers is going to have look, Evans has done it. Godwin had a great year last year, but those numbers could go up exponentially if, in fact, everyone stays healthy and everyone's in place. You can really see, one of those 3 players really take 20 times jump on what they've seen here in the last couple months.
Yeah, I mean, the potential is certainly there for them to continue to go up if the offense is great. So I know you obviously being in Tampa, being a football analyst, you're obviously plugged in with the Bucs. But the other team that you are, is kind of your history, much more plugged in with, and I know you still do a lot of work for them today. You played for them for many years. The New York Jets. I know the Jets are a team close to your heart, and the Jets are an interesting team this season, right? I mean, they were, I would classify them as quite disappointing last year. Obviously, Sam Darnold was out a bunch. People were expecting a big second-year progression from Sam Darnold last year. That didn't happen. But might we this year start to see Darnold actually maybe live up to some of that hype when he was drafted? Might we see Le'Veon Bell maybe have a little bit of a better fit or a better season in the offense? Might we see some things from New York this year? Should people be excited about this team, or are the Jets just one of these teams that perpetually is rebuilding, it seems?
Well, it seems like that seems to be the narrative for this football team every year I cover them is they're rebuilding. They're trying to get some more pieces in there. I think Sam Darnold will take a jump. You're right. Being out last year with mononucleosis, coming back, you're really not truly healthy after coming off mono. Your body's trying to build back. A tremendous amount of turnover with the offensive line. We don't talk about, those kind of things when you're looking at teams and you're looking at the skills players, but you draft one of the best tackles in the draft, Mekhi Becton, who's 6'8", 350 pounds. You're talking about a guy that's massive that can not only create holes for Le'Veon Bell, but also get that pass protection on the backside that Sam's going to need. And really, it's the downside with Darnold is he's needed weapons over the last couple of years. And they really haven't found the go-to receiver. Robbie Anderson, a lot of speed last year, but really didn't create and become the guy that everybody's looking for, so they moved on with him. They signed Rashard Perryman, who's, I think, a really good sign, undervalued sign for the Jets because of the fact that, he wasn't a starter in Tampa Bay. When Mike Evans went down last year, he was the leading receiver over the last 5 games of the NFL. And he brings a tremendous amount of speed, a former first-round pick. He's going to be big. Denzel Mims was drafted with Baylor this season. He's a receiver that I really was high on coming out of the draft. I think he's going to be a big target. And another guy they didn't have last year in the first 5 games of the season because of the suspension was tight end Chris Herndon. I really think he's a guy that can take a huge jump this year in his 3rd season. This is where you kind of see players in their 3rd year really take off. So, can Sam be better? Yes. Can Le'Veon Bell be best? Brand new offensive line across the board, like we talked about. You could expect a big jump from these guys. But again, with no preseason and no offseason really with these guys together, how good can they be early? A team like this, where we saw Tampa could probably jump in and be successful, the Jets may take a couple weeks to kind of get that mesh together with the offense they have down on the field.
Yeah, that's a really interesting dynamic that I think football card investors need to think about this season, is the fact that we haven't had the offseason. And so some of that meshing is going to be difficult to do for a team that's had a lot of parts coming in and out. A team that's got more veterans, and some of those veterans, being used to playing together. Obviously, the Brady Gronk connection has, been one of many years. Now it's just in a new uniforms. Those types of teams, as you said, they may start out a little hotter. Teams that have retained a lot of their starters, that type of thing. And so as a football card investor, thinking about, hey, who are the teams that might come out of the gate hot? Because of that, those are the teams that are probably going to see the prices of their cards, have those immediate jumps in the first few weeks of the season. A team like the Jets, it may be that they, early part of the season, maybe not as much, but then as the season goes on, maybe they really start to gel and the season strong. I just brought up Sam Darnold's card prices. I'm looking at his 2018 Prism base. And, like a lot of the football card market, these cards have gone up a lot this offseason. I mean, every single graph I'm going to show you during this episode is all up and to the right because just about every sports card has been up and to the right over the last several months, right? So, but it's interesting looking at the trend compared to other players' trends. And Darnold's cards definitely have gone up, maybe not quite as much as some of the other guys we're going to look at today, but certainly more than other guys. There are a lot of people who are speculating that Sam Darnold is going to have a better 3rd year. It's going to be interesting to watch. By the way, these card prices right now for this 2018 Prism Football PSA 10 is hovering right around $200 is where that card is. That card going back to the end of last season, that card was around $35. But again, most of the football market has had that type of jump over the course of the last several months. So around $200, honestly, a comparative value. Obviously, if you compare that to a Lamar Jackson, who's, many times that, or even some contemporaries, around like maybe a Josh Allen or that type of thing are going to be more expensive than that. Of course, those guys have been a little more proven on the field, but it will be interesting to see if Darnold can prove himself this year. Definitely going to be interesting to watch them for sure. So obviously the Jets an interesting team to watch, the Bucs an interesting team to watch. Other interesting teams to watch this year, of course, one that comes to mind, first and foremost, the Kansas City Chiefs coming off just an incredible run last year. Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to call up his card prices. I mean, you want to talk about a guy that just hasn't slowed down in terms of his card prices. Coming off his Super Bowl win, you could have bought his 2017 Prism Silver PSA 10 for about $1,200 right around the time he won the Super Bowl. And that card most recently is up at about $6,500. So that, talk about making some significant money. And it's just, again, the rise of football cards in general, but in particular Mahomes, because he's, already kind of turned into an iconic star, and people are excited that maybe the Chiefs are in the driver's seat to repeat again this season. Do you buy into that?
1,000%. Knowing Andy Reid a long time, playing in the league over the years, and of course calling college football, watching Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. I mean, listen, the kid wasn't a proven winner at Texas Tech. There wasn't a lot of buzz. Everyone loved his skill set. They thought, wow, this guy can throw a ball 80 yards. He can move around. He can make crazy throws. But when he came into the league, he wasn't an immediate starter. And then he just, was able to learn and grow. And Andy Reid did a great job with him. But there's no question this team is loaded across from top to bottom on the offensive side of the football. They have an outstanding offensive line. And what makes an offensive line even better is a guy like Mahomes that can create, can move around the pocket, can make throws, looking right and throwing left. I mean, some of the things he does is amazing, and he's just exciting. And his card value, like you talked about, is tremendous to see because, you look at him and you think there's still more he can do in his such a young career with one Super Bowl win, an MVP at the Super Bowl as well. So the weapons are all there. Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins. You look at the tight end position, Travis Kelce. They have an inside receiver, Mecole Hardman. Hardman's a great return guy as well. What are the flaws for this football team? They're hard to pin out. Even if the defense, who's been up and down for them over the last couple of years, gives up some points, can we not think that they can't come back from any game after watching the Texans playoff game last year when they got down, 3 touchdowns early in that football game? So this team is stacked, and I expect they're really to come out the gate. So one thing I'll say is this. Playing in Kansas City my last season, the number one thing that was huge for this football team was the fans. The best fan base in the NFL. They're the loudest. They always show up, rain, snow, or shine. And that's not going to be there this year. So will there be a competitive advantage for them at home this year? No. So everything kind of evens out. That'll be the biggest thing across the board. But Kansas City, as far as their team is concerned, they are loaded.
Yeah, they're going to be an interesting team to watch. And they added a new weapon this year. They got a rookie running back who a lot of people are taking in the first round of their fantasy drafts. They think this guy's going to be so good.
Yeah, Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU. I mean, you talk about a complete back, and that's what you're looking for, right? Because when you're talking about fantasy, you want points. So it can't be just rushing and touchdowns. It has to be receiving as well. This guy had 1,400 yards and 500 yards receiving his senior year at LSU. Very highly rated coming out of college. Came from a system that had a ton of weapons, very pro-stylish at LSU, won a national championship. And to me, this is a steal for them. I mean, to get a guy to come in the backfield now, I mean, we look at a couple of years ago when Kareem Hunt was a draft pick and he stepped in, no longer with the football team, how much of a jump he made just in his rookie season. This is a guy that's even more dynamic, can catch the ball out of the backfield. He's strong inside the tackle, and he's got great speed on the outside. If you're investing, like you said, in a guy early on that could really have some great potential, there's no question that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is one of those guys.
Yeah, it's going to be when the major football card sets come out this year, like Prism and Optic and Select. It's going to be interesting to watch people chasing his rookie cards. I think he's going to be one of the more popular rookie cards in the sets this year. Let's talk about a team who many thought might have been the title contender at various points throughout the season last year. They looked electric, but then all of a sudden they went out in the first round of the playoffs, kind of shockingly. The Baltimore Ravens. Let's talk about what they are looking like this year.
Well, again, it all starts at the quarterback position. You talked about Lamar Jackson. Here's another guy that skyrocketed on the scene. And again, a lot of question marks about him coming out of college. Can he pass efficiently in the NFL? Can he do that? Well, that's not a factor. I mean, look, the guy can beat you with his legs at any point in the field. 1,200 yards rushing last year, 7 touchdowns. That would be awesome for your top running back for a football team. And they got a bunch of really good running backs that we'll talk about. But, the fact that people, aren't growing on his passing is really an understatement to me. 3,100 yards passing, led the NFL with 36 touchdown passes, which is huge for a guy that, not a lot of people talk about, and being efficient, only 6 interceptions. The one thing that did show up in that playoff game, Jeff, when we watched it was he wasn't, his completion percentage, getting the ball efficiently to his receivers when they needed it. When the run game and the boxes got loaded in defensive to stop that run game, could he beat you with his arm? And that's kind of how they kind of leaned on that when they lost in the playoffs. So that'll be the big turn. 14-2 last year, taking a step. The receiving game to me isn't great, but Marquise Brown is a receiver that I think can have a huge year. Willie Snead, Mark Andrews, a tight end for them is good. But, man, really deep at the running back position. Mark Ingram, they drafted J.K. Dobbins. They drafted Justice Hill last year. So, again, they're going to be tough, snot bubble football team. They're going to come back strong. And just like we talked about Kansas City, they're right there as one of the top teams in the NFL.
Yeah. And if you thought that Patrick Mahomes card prices went up a lot this offseason, you haven't seen anything when I show you Lamar Jackson's card prices. I mean, look at that peak of this incredible, oh my gosh, it's nuts. I mean, if you go back to the end of last season, of course, they were eliminated, obviously, early on. And so that caused an immediate drop in Lamar Jackson's card prices. If you had picked up his cards right after they got eliminated, and I'm talking about his 2018 Prism base card in PSA 10, that was a $250 card, maybe $275 right after they got eliminated. That card peaked. If you go back a few weeks ago, that card was all the way up at almost $4,000, between $3,500 and $4,000, wow. A card that was only $250 to $275. It's come down a little bit. We've seen a little bit of a market, cool off in the last few weeks, but it's still around $2,700. It's still a 1,442% increase from where it was if we go back to last November through today. So just underneath a year, this card's gone up 1,442%. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, I'm excited to see what he and the Ravens can do this year. It's going to be really fun to watch. What do you think though about the defending NFC champions, the team that made it through the NFC last year, looked maybe a little flat in the Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers. I know we've had historically, if you go back the last several years, the team that loses the Super Bowl tends to struggle a little bit the following year. Do you expect that to happen from the 49ers, or are they a solid enough franchise now where they can just kind of continue to be a favorite in the NFC year over year?
Yeah, Jeff, I think they have to prove it again this year for me. This is a team that's doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, right? They got some playmakers. They play efficiently on offense. They have good balance. Kyle Shanahan, their play caller and head coach. I mean, the guy was pouring coffee with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when I was there as a player, learning from John Gruden, learning from his dad, Mike Shanahan. And now he's been such a great, prolific play caller. And the one thing about him that makes him so dynamic as a caller is he utilizes the guys that he has and brings the strengths out of what they can do best on the football field. And they really live hard on defense as well. Nick Bosa is a guy, to me, with tremendous value that's done a great job, just that whole defensive line. And they continue to add pieces so it's a complete football team. Normally we see some of the top echelon teams like Chiefs and the Ravens, they're kind of one-sided. They got great offenses. Ravens has a good defense as well. But those are kind of the combinations that still work. I'm old school. I like that kind of brand of football. But they don't have the star power. And I want to see if they can continue to do it year after year. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is a guarantee to be really good like he was last season. And a lot of people may have thought that he didn't have a great year as a quarterback. He was a game manager, which nobody likes to hear. They don't have a star-studded running back. Their number one receivers at tight end, who I love, and George Kittle's. But again, I think just in general, I don't know if they're going to sneak up on a lot of teams this year. And their division is much tougher as well in the NFC South. So they may have some hurdles. I don't know if they bounce back as well as they did. But they do have some key additions that are going to help. Trent Williams, the offensive line, is going to stabilize the offensive line there. But can they match it? That's a big question mark for me.
Yeah, and I would say most sports card investors probably agree with that analysis because Jimmy Garoppolo's cards have been relatively flat compared to all of the guys we just talked about. I mean, they've gone up some, and you can see by the graph on your screen that there has been obviously, there was quite a spike for a little while, and then they've started to come back down. They've got up 260%. If we going back to November of last year through now, they're up 260%. That sounds like a lot, but considering that the overall football card market's been going up a ton, and I just showed you Lamar Jackson, who had gone up over 1,400% during that same period. Even Sam Darnold, I think, was up around 500%. Or something of that nature. So Garoppolo only at 260%. He's actually lagging a lot of his contemporaries. Maybe people just aren't excited. That game manager title, as you said, that's a killer. maybe people just don't think that San Francisco can make it back. But what I will say is that if, when you see a player like this whose cards have really not progressed much and a lot of his peers are really outpacing him, if he does come out and surprise people, if San Francisco does have the type of season they had last year, if Garoppolo is slinging the ball around even a little more, then this is a guy who could potentially see a larger jump because his cards haven't seen that over the offseason. So maybe there's a little more upwards room built in if you believe that could happen.
I agree. I mean, his numbers were okay, 4,000-yard passer, 27 touchdown passes. But again, if they just need more weapons around him. I think, throwing to a tight end is great for me, being a former tight end. I think that's great, but it's not sexy to really the fan bases and people to get excited. They need that number one receiver. Deebo Samuels is a good player, but he just doesn't have that big-time playability yet. If they get a component in that play, that could help. But this year going into the season, I don't see that guy there.
Yeah. And you just made a really important point. With sports card investing, the player and the team have to have flash. They have to have pizzazz. They have to be leading Sports Center highlights for the card prices to really react. I mean, a solid team that's winning games, but that is taking more of a game management type approach, lower scoring, running the ball a lot. That is typically not exciting sports card investors. You need to have that flashy quarterback to receiver connection. You need to have the big plays leading Sports Center, and San Francisco may just not be that team. So they may just not, none of the guys may see their cards, have such a big rise as a result. But let's talk about another team that has had no shortage of offense for the last few years. Let's talk about the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you talk about number one, a division that's so improved, and they're really the front runners for this division. I mean, Drew Brees obviously may be his last year going into the season, but still as good as ever as distributing the football. But the weapons are really incredible as well. Let's start with the guy that's making a lot of buzz right now. He's probably going to sign one of the biggest contracts for a running back / receiver out of the backfield in Alvin Kamara. I mean, this is a guy with 81 catches last year. He's a guy they want to lock up long term. And you can expect a spike in his card immediately when his contract gets signed. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow. Maybe he's already signed it before the watchers watch this. But and then Michael Thomas. I mean, you're talking about the best receiver in football. Let's be honest, statistically, that's been out there. 149 catches, the single season record last year. He had 30 more targets to him than the next best receiver in the NFL. So everybody knows he's getting the ball, and they still can't stop him. That is star power, and he's been able to do it year after year. So, this team has done an excellent job of just continuing to add pieces. They're well coached. They got a great system. They got that little wrinkle coming out at the quarterback / receiver / running back with Taysom Hill when he comes into the game and kind of mix things up for the Saints. So, and they probably have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL as well. I mean, when you add those pieces up, those are the things that make teams great for a long period of time. And right now, that's one of the reasons why they're going to be one of the favorites coming out of the NFC. Yeah.
And big contracts do have an effect on sports card prices. Looking over in baseball, we saw Mookie Betts when the Dodgers signed him to that, huge contract going back a couple months ago, a huge spike in his card prices. Also, when the Chiefs signed Patrick Mahomes to that giant contract, his card spiked based upon that news. What's interesting, looking at Alvin Kamara's card prices, which I have up here on the screen, he hasn't actually had, he had the big climb up that a lot of players have seen. He hasn't, however, had the dip back that we also saw with Garoppolo and Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes when we were looking at their graphs a minute ago, where the market started to cool a little bit in recent weeks and they started to come back down to earth a little bit. Kamara hasn't. And so I actually think that's probably because there's a number of football card investors out there that are anticipating the contract. So really that contract signing may already be built into his price. So you may not see the pop that you normally would, because I think a lot of people are anticipating it, but who knows? We'll see what happens when that news is announced. And, as a Atlanta Falcons fan, I am supposed to hate the New Orleans Saints. I mean, they're supposed to be the big rival. However, I got to admit, I've always liked Drew Brees. I've always liked New Orleans ever since Hurricane Katrina. And then, that comeback story and, build around football and, they win the Super Bowl. To me, that was just like such a likable moment for the city, for Drew Brees, everything like that. That I've always kind of kept the Saints as a team that I root for, but I just do it quietly. I can't let any of my Falcons friends know because they would not put up with that.
Well, speaking of Falcons, can we get a bounce back year? I mean, you want to talk about a team loaded with first round picks and a lot of weapons. It shocks me that they had such a bad year last season. I got to think they're going to bounce back big this year. So that division is loaded with the Bucks and Carolina and all these other teams. I mean, this could be a fun year for that division.
It's going to be fun. And I do like the Falcons. Last year they had a horrendous start to their year. But then they had a really good end to the year. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but just based on my memory watching the games, I think they went maybe like 7-1 in their last 8 games. It was a great run to end the year. I'm optimistic. I think they can carry that momentum into this year. I think they're going to be good, but as you said, in order to be good, they now got to go through Tampa Bay. They now got to go through New Orleans. So, who knows? I don't know, but it's going to certainly be a very, very fun division to watch without a doubt. Let's talk about another team that's always fun to watch. People love talking about the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, Jerry Jones went out and got himself another offensive weapon in the draft in the first round, another splashy draft pick. Dak Prescott doesn't have his contract, but his card prices, he has been one of the biggest increasers. In fact, Dak Prescott's cards over the last 10 months, if we go back to November of last year, they have gone up more from a percentage standpoint than any guy we've talked about so far. More than Lamar Jackson, more than Patrick Mahomes. They are up 1,742%. And unlike some of those guys, they have not been coming down in recent days. People are really enthusiastic about seeing what Dak and Dallas can do. These 2016 Prism Silver PSA 10 cards from Dak Prescott, they were, during last season, you could have gotten these cards for as little as $50. These cards, the most recent sales on these cards are now $1,100, almost $1,400. A card that was $50 last season. Absolutely incredible. What is your outlook for the Cowboys?
And I'll tell you, they are loaded. It starts obviously up front, and they made a lot of sexy draft picks in the past couple of years prior to these weapons that got their line back where they needed to be. Dak Prescott is kind of like the most hated, loved player that's out there, right? He never gets the respect. It even seems like the Dallas Cowboys, who keep saying he's the guy for the future, who they couldn't lock down that contract, signed the franchise tag this year. Is there a chip on his shoulder? Is there something that, maybe he's not meshing there? I'm not sure. But when you look at his numbers, 7 games last year, he threw for 300 yards. He had 4,900 yards plus passing, which was second in the NFL. And like you spoke about, they added another weapon from the draft in CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma. So, Ezekiel Elliott is going to have a big year. Remember, he held out last year in training camp, so he didn't have that full kind of off-season training camp to go through and get himself prepared for the season. He kind of, sparked a little later on. Amari Cooper is back, obviously, as a target that I think will improve. Wasn't great numbers for him last year, but I almost feel like, that transition with another receiver, another playmaker can help really make them a difference maker on the football field. So I expect, in the division that they're in, Giants will improve. Not sure how good. Redskins, the Washington football team, when you watch them, I don't know how much they'll jump up. And then, the Eagles are going to be a very competitive team. But I think Cowboys are going to be probably the favorites coming in. And if Dak can go off, is there an issue with them maybe long term? But I don't know if that's going to affect him too much. I really like Dak as a player. He's very smart with the football. He doesn't make those catastrophic mistakes. And he is mobile. He can move around. Again, another guy coming out of college that you wouldn't have pegged him being a big star in the NFL out of Mississippi State. And he's been able to make that transition and be one of the best in the league. Well,
I would have pegged him to be a big star. He was a Dan Mullen disciple at Mississippi State. And of course, now we got Mullen down here at the University of Florida with my Florida Gators. And he is he's rolling us in the right direction. So I expected big things from Dak. And we got big things from Dak. So it's great to see. All right, one more team I want to ask you about, and then I'd love to hear a few surprise teams from you this year. But the last team I want to ask you about, a team that has been subject of much discussion this offseason. What are they going to do with quarterback? What's their year going to look like? The New England Patriots. And I just brought up a graph of Cam Newton's card prices because, man, talk about how a signing by a football team can change everything. I mean, you're looking at, this is his 2011 Topps football base card. This was like a $17 card, even a PSA 10. This was a sub $20 card back in April when his future was like super uncertain. And then all of a sudden, it shot up to $272 right after the news of his signing by the Patriots. And now it's continued to go up. It's now all the way up at around $400. Again, a card that you could have had for $20 back in April is now $400. Absolutely incredible. Do you think he's going to deliver on that?
Man, that's a huge question, right? Everybody right now hearing out of training camp, have we ever heard Bill Belichick give so much love and really prop a guy up more during the season, preseason at least, than Cam Newton? I mean, they seem to really love his skill set. He's obviously a personality that's much different that comes to New England. But again, when you really look at it and break it down, are the weapons in place for this team to be as good or maybe similar to what they were in the past? You know, Cam Newton is not Tom Brady. There's no question. But Tom Brady has done a lot of great things without a lot of talent around him. Cam Newton hasn't had a lot of talent around him in Carolina when he's there, the player. So what's the give? You know, one, he's healthy. I think, number one, that's going to be good. I think he's got a huge chip on his shoulder going into the season. I think Bill Belichick as well as a coach is going to have a huge chip on the shoulder because they want to prove that they can do things post Tom Brady. But what are the weapons that he's going to get to? Julian Edelman, yeah, of course. We know him. We know he can be one of those guys that can work the inside, make the tough catches, but he's not going to get you those huge plays down the field. There is one guy on the team that they drafted last season is N'Keal Harry, a receiver out of Arizona State. Big guy, 6'4" receiver, was hurt most of the season last year, so he didn't really get on the field and show his stuff, and they really thought highly of him in the draft. Maybe he becomes a product now that has a huge season for them. You know, Sony Michel is a little nicked up in training camp. How good will he be coming into the season? So, again, a lot of question marks. And you look at all the teams in the NFL, Geoff, you look at some of these players that opted out because of the COVID pandemic. They lead the charge. A lot of key players, Hightower on defense, some other Patrick Chung, a secondary player. So they're going to miss some players that aren't going to play because of the pandemic. So odds are against it, but listen, in that division, okay, it's not the toughest division. Buffalo, very beatable, even though they had a good year last year. Jets, we assume they may be better. And, of course, Dolphins, who is growing with a lot of draft picks. I mean, it's still there for them. They could win it with 9-7 going into the season. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes off. But, again, I have question marks about the weapons around Cam. He can't do it by himself. He's not the same runner, and that'll be key going into the season.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. All right, give me a couple of teams who you think could maybe surprise people this season, teams that we haven't talked about.
Well, two teams off the top of my head. Arizona Cardinals are going to be a much better team. You know, Kyler Murray, and we could probably get into his card later, that he's got a skyrocketing value as well. He's did a tremendous job last season, 3,500 yards passing, 500 yards rushing. But they add DeAndre Hopkins. Think about this now. You got Hopkins on the outside, Christian Kirk on the other side, and the only guy that's still there when I played for him is Larry Fitzgerald with another year coming back for the Cardinals. So, you know, this team's going to be a lot better. They added some good draft picks. Andy Isabella, another inside fast special team receiver, is also a guy that I think can make big plays for this team as well in space. So I look for them to improve. Another team that I like, at least to bounce back and be better, are the Green Bay Packers. I think, one, you look at quarterbacks that have chips on their shoulders. Well, why not Aaron Rodgers, right? They go out and draft a first-round quarterback in Jordan Love, and although he says it's fine and everything's good, I know behind closed doors, when a guy gets drafted that plays the same position as you, that kind of ticks you off a little bit. So I think he bounces back big, and I think they did a good job in the draft of helping support that. They went and drafted A.J. Dillon, a running back from Boston College, who I think is going to be a road grader. He's got tremendous size and speed. And in addition for Aaron Jones, who, let's be honest, is probably one of the best underrated running backs that's out there, you know, led the NFL with 1,500 plus total yards as a running back and had 19 touchdowns. That also led the NFL at running back position as well. So, you know, Aaron was a little off with 4,000 yards passing, 26 touchdowns. I think he can bounce back big. So two teams, both in the NFC, that I think can really have good years and really bounce back big and make some problems for their divisions.
Yeah, those are going to be interesting teams to watch. And honestly, there may be some good football buying opportunities there. So I just brought up Kyler Murray's graph, his 2019 Prism football base and PSA 10. It has certainly gone up a lot, right? But this card right now is only about $700 to $800, maybe around $800 is where this card currently sits. Well, and look, $800, I recognize that's a ton of money to spend on a card. I shouldn't say only $800. There's some people in the audience right now that are like, are you nuts? But of course, I'm just showing the PSA 10 version of this card just because that's a really nice graph for me to look at. But you obviously could get into this card if you don't want to commit that type of money with a PSA 9 or with a raw, or you could look to other sets other than Prism. You could get his base optic rookie or something like that. But what I like about Murray is, like, if you think about this, relative, like, it's an $800 card right now. But if Sam Darnold was less than that, but like not a ton less than that. And then you have other guys like Lamar Jackson, who was like obviously many, many multiples of, this Kyler Murray card that's sitting at around $800. And so I feel like if Murray comes out and really does, if that offense really does showcase its potential, and his connection with Hopkins is really strong, Kyler could be one of those guys kind of like Lamar Jackson last year, who just really breaks out and sees his card prices just go up and up and up and up and up. It's possible. I think the base that he's starting from actually still leaves some upwards room for that to happen. So that's going to be an interesting one. Aaron Rodgers, obviously his card prices, and I just brought those up, his 2005 Topps Football base card. His card prices have been certainly established for some time. But they've gone up a lot this year too, just not nearly as much as what some of the other players we've talked about have, even though they've gone up a lot in their own right. But it's not as speculative of an investment as some of the other guys. So he's not going to have quite the same degree of peaks and valleys at this point. But, if he can ever get back to another Super Bowl, and that's a big if, but if he can ever get back to another Super Bowl, it could really do wonders for his card prices. So there's some opportunity there as well if he's going to be a breakout star. Speaking of breakout stars, I want to ask you about a couple of the quarterbacks who were rookies in the last few years, and if they could maybe become breakout stars or not. Let's start with Daniel Jones of the Giants.
Yeah, well, you look at Daniel Jones, and I think the pieces around him are good. Saquon Barkley, a very good running back who's going to have a big year. Golden Tate, decent receiver who's, kind of an accountable piece for him at the receiver position. Evan Ingram, I expect him at the tight end position to bounce back more. I don't know if there's huge upswing with him maybe, this year, but they're going to get better, continue to grow and get pieces. They still, again, for me, they need that big receiver, that big-time guy to complement Daniel Jones. But the one thing he brings to the table is his intellect, his ability to distribute the ball, be smart with the football. And I think a lot of those things kind of showed off for his rookie season.
And his card prices right now, his 2019 Prism football base, around $330, maybe $350. So about half the price of Kyler Murray, a little less than half the price of Kyler Murray. So maybe a little bit of value to be had with Daniel Jones if he's able to have a great season this year. Same card, same population count, but a little less than half the price. So that's where the market sees him right now. It will be interesting to see where he goes. It will also be interesting to see where Drew Lock goes. Again, same population count roughly, same card, his 2019 Prism base PSA 10. His are around $430, $440. So a little bit more than Daniel Jones, but still significantly less than Kyler Murray. Is that appropriate for Drew Lock? What do you expect out of him?
I think it is. Look, there's a lot of buzz around Drew Lock. I think everywhere you talk about it, he's going to be the rising quarterback. But to me, I'm a little more speculative. They have a lot of weapons around him. Do you have key running backs behind? Yeah, they went out and got Melvin Gordon. Phillip Lindsay became a great acquisition as an undrafted free agent out of college. He's been a good running back. Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and KJ Hamler are rookie receivers that I am really high on. But for me, I got to see Drew Lock do it, right? He was a great player in college, but when I covered him in college, very simplistic offense, didn't really get into the real details of what it takes to lead an NFL offense. Not that he can't do it, but I have to see it first. I think he's got all the arm talent you want in a quarterback, but can he deliver? They didn't win a lot of games at Missouri, came onto the scene last year, but finally, took some strides. Now he's the guy. I just want to see it from my own eyes, Geoff, before I kind of put my eggs in that basket. But as far as value is concerned, like you talked about, very, an attainable card a lot of people can get and afford. He may be a nice little plug to get a little bit of a jump if they can bounce this year.
Yeah, interesting. All right, one more quarterback I want to ask you about, and then I'd love to hear maybe a couple of your surprise players this year. I want to ask you about Baker Mayfield, because if you've been watching his cards over the last few years, it's been so interesting. He was the hottest possible card, it seemed like, in 2018. And then he kind of went down, in 2019. And he even saw a dip, he saw a noticeable dip as last season went on and as we got into the offseason. His cards have certainly climbed back a lot, and you can see the graph on the screen. But again, a lot of cards have climbed. His percentage-wise climb has been kind of a similar climb to maybe a Sam Darnold type climb. His cards right now are sitting around $400 for his 2018 Prism Base and PSA 10. So right around the Daniel Jones level, the Drew Lock level. He's kind of right in the group with those guys. Could he be maybe even a better investment than those guys, or are you expecting the Browns just to never quite get it together?
Well, I wasn't very high on Baker Mayfield coming out of school. I loved his story. I thought he did an excellent job in college, but as I watch him, I think this is a really crucial year for him. You look at his football team and you scratch your head and you wonder why he maybe isn't as good. I mean, Jarvis Landry's there, an excellent receiver. Odell Beckham is there. They just got Austin Hooper, a tight end, and who they had Njoku last year, who was a very good tight end. And they have really good running backs with acquiring Akeem Hunt and then also Nick Chubb in the draft. I just don't see it with Baker Mayfield. There's a lot more else we talk about with Baker than actually what he does and does on the field well. I think, the pressures maybe got to him last season. So much buzz. I mean, did anybody talk about more than any team in the Cleveland Browns last year? I mean, they haven't won anything when you talk about what they've done year over year, and all of a sudden they get this buzz, and he really couldn't live up to it. Again, he has to be a guy that I have to see it. I've seen it now for 2 years. I don't see where the big jump's going to be. He lost some weight in the training camp. They got some new coaches, but again, more turnover, a different system. Can he catch fire with this football team and win games? It seems like they're kind of like Washington the old. They bring in a lot of big name guys that just could never get it to turn the page. I don't know if he's going to be good enough to really, take that next step, but we'll see. I mean, he's always been a guy that's kind of went above and beyond and proved people wrong. But I just don't know if he kind of takes a step back, humbles himself, and dials into the position and learns how to play it a little better, I can see him taking a jump. But right now, I'm not a big believer in Baker Mayfield.
Well, give me a name of maybe a few players who you are a believer in going into this year who we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, well, I got a receiver, a running back, and two quarterbacks. Real quick, the guy that I think is going to bounce back and have a really big year that's been around the league for a while, Matthew Stafford for the Lions. I think that, when you look at his numbers over the last couple of years, not last year playing only 8 games, he's averaged about 4,500 yards passing, and he's got more weapons. He's got Galladay, who's become a really nice player, T.J. Hawkinson, the tight end they got, and they also got DeAndre Swift in the draft, who I think is going to be a really nice plug-in player along with the other players that they have. So I expect him to take a nice bounce and really be a good player for them and help that team moving forward. At the running back position, I kind of talked to him about a little bit earlier with the Giants, is Saquon Barkley. 1,000 yards rushing, 400 yards receiving last year. He really was their only weapon and didn't have a lot of pieces around him to be great. So I just think that he's always going to take strides. He's a tremendous runner. He's got tremendous speed, and he'll only get better at that position. I really think he's going to have a big season as well. Teddy Bridgewater. I'm a huge Teddy Bridgewater fan, man. 5-0 last year with the New Orleans Saints. People forget when his second season with the Minnesota Vikings, he took that team to the playoffs, and he also that team lost on a field goal. So he was able to get them in a certain position early on in his career. I think he's going to take huge strides. I think he's going to be a really good player. I think that division is tough, but he's going to be a guy that's going to ruin some things for some football teams this year. And they got a lot of players around him, Christian McCaffrey, and some other weapons that they can be good at as well. And my last player, who's a rookie, out in Oakland is Henry Ruggs, wide receiver out of Alabama. Wow, what you're talking about, blazing speed. He can run by any defensive back in the NFL. I know this, playing for John Gruden at Tampa Bay, he loves speed, and he loves to chuck the ball down the field if he has it. Expect him to get a lot of targets, a lot of chances to make huge plays, and potentially a lot of juice in the end zone for him at touchdowns. And maybe his rookie value kind of skyrockets because they can have a bounce back year from last season as well. So 4 guys that I think, in general, along with the guys that we've talked about already, that can really have some nice seasons this year that maybe can get a spark not only on the field, but in their card value as well.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Ruggs will be, I'm sure, another popular rookie that people will be chasing when Optic and Prism and Select come out later this year for sure. Let's look at Saquon Barkley. This is his card graph. It's kind of interesting that his 2018 Prism base PSA 10 cards are selling for right around $400. So actually, we talked about Drew Lock and we talked about Daniel Jones and we talked about Baker Mayfield and now Saquon Barkley. All of their prices are right somewhere in the neighborhood of that $400 range for their base Prism card. So really, that's kind of an interesting question. I'd love to hear in the comments below, if you had $400 and you could only buy one of these guys' cards, considering they're all right around the same price point, which one do you think is going to go up the most? Saquon Barkley, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, or Baker Mayfield? Take your pick. They're all right around the same price point. I'd love to hear in the comments below who you're going to buy. And let me call up Bridgewater, because Bridgewater's card prices, obviously they got a boost this offseason. They've gone up a lot this offseason when he did get signed by Carolina and he got this starting job. But I mean, they're still relatively affordable. This is his 2014 Topps Chrome. It's a relatively low population card at $345, and it's $121. So, as we're talking about these other guys at $400 for their rookie cards with greater populations, Bridgewater's at $121 for his rookie card. So, the challenge, though, as you said, I mean, that is a tough road. That is a tough division. I mean, even if he does well for them, can they really overcome some of the competition they're going to have to face week over week? I don't know. But if they surprise some people, then certainly Bridgewater's card prices are going to benefit.
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm just glad we have football, right? We got something coming up here this weekend. So it's going to be great, but there's a lot of players out there that have tremendous value that can really take huge jumps. And you see it, right? You see baseball, you get into baseball season, these cards pop off, rookies, whoever play well, basketball. Well, guess what? Football season will do the same thing. I expect jumps. People will start collecting. I'm going to add on to some of my collection on the football side. And I think that's going to be, it'll be the big deal. Everybody loves football. It's going to be huge.
Yeah. So speaking of that, with football now upon us, I know you're going to be talking a lot about football this season for sure. How can people find you? How can people follow you and listen to what you have to say?
Yeah, so they can follow me on Twitter. I'm on all the platforms, but at Anthony_Becht, Becht. That's basically where I start. Everything will be there. For this season, I'm kind of upgrading my branding a little bit digitally. I'll have 2 exclusive podcasts. One will be specifically for the Bucs called Walking the Plank. I'll do it twice a week. I'll talk about the game and then obviously the game moving forward into the week on the second edition. And then, of course, with the Jets, it's called Becht's Flight Plan, which will be another podcast that I'll have. I'll also have twice a week a daily show called Spit and Fire with myself and Dan Grassa, who does pre and post game with me with the Jets. He's on a lot of New York radio up north. He's huge in baseball, basketball, does excellent in football. It's going to be a cool little, just kind of talk about sports, gambling, fantasy, just really have some fun and put some more content. And I just want to thank you. You've been I've gotten into the card game a little bit. I've watched, you were the go-to guy when I first went to YouTube. I saw all your YouTubes, really taught me a lot about understanding what to look for, what to buy, what to invest in. And I really got into it a little bit. I also, Gary Vee is a good friend of mine as well. He's a huge Jet fan. And, he's been able to kind of, lead away as well. So this whole thing has been awesome for me. And I actually started a little E-Trade store, an e-sports card store called the sportcardshop.com. I just dabbled in my collection, threw some cards up there, had some fun. Me and my son kind of got into it. So those are kind of all the things I'll be doing. But, hitting my Twitter at Anthony_Becht is the best spot to find me.
Awesome. Anthony, this has been great. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoyed the season. Good luck to the Bucs and the Jets and the other teams you're following. And thanks for being part of this episode of Sports Card Investor.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Great time.
Take care.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed my interview with Anthony Becht. I thought it was a great one. Go give him a follow on Twitter. And also, guys, check out my Market Movers data platform. You can do so by going to sportscardinvestor.com and clicking on Market Movers in the main menu bar. All of the charts and graphs and analytics we talked about in today's show, those were all from Market Movers. It is the ultimate way to watch how football card prices are changing this season and to watch how the value of your collection is changing each and every day along with it. Again, go to sportscardinvestor.com and click on Market Movers. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. See you back in a few days with our next episode.